Hey, this is Gene from Motoclops, and this is our install video for our power kit, which includes the BAC4000 and BAC8000 from ASI. Next, we're going to remove the controller. So first thing, I'm going to just lower the skid plate a little bit. All right. Take our 4mm and start removing the mounting bolts. Our 3mm for the cable guide. We will not be reusing this, so this is removed. The 3mm bolts, once removed, reveals the top 4mm mounting bolts for the top of the controller. Right there. Once removed, this allows the controller to hang, and then we're going to remove these 5mm bolts for the back battery plate. This allows us to slide the back battery plate out and pull the harness wires for the controller to be able to disconnect. Like that. Then we're going to use our 5mm to remove the power and the phase wire bolts. All right, now that the controller is removed, we can remove the original mounting brackets and remove the tilt sensor. So we're going to get our 4mm. All right, we're going to remove the tilt sensor. Tilt sensor is out. All right, so to create additional room during install, there are these zip ties near each of the positive and negative wire going to the breaker and over here on the harness. This helps create room for the billet mount. Now these are nice and free. So we're going to take our upper mount here and take our 3mm hex and 8mm socket. Notice how I'm sliding the bracket behind the wires. That was one of the reasons why we cut the zip ties, so we can get this around there. And then you're going to get the 3mm and this 8mm nut back so we can secure the top mounting bracket. Now we're going to install the lower mounting brackets. The one on the right side of the bike, you want to orient where it's pointing down. Both of these will be in the down position. You're going to use your existing bolts that you removed from the original brackets and install. As a pro tip, I usually keep these as wide as I possibly can. The bracket mounting holes are oblong, which gives you the ability to move the bracket to the left and to the right, and I typically keep it at its widest point. These bolts do have lock washers, so don't worry about tightening them too much. Just get them nice and snug. Now, if you've purchased an aftermarket throttle, this would be a great opportunity to install the aftermarket throttle and run the cable, because this is your throttle cable, and you'll be routing the wires behind the controller after you install the throttle. Next, we're going to connect the phase wires. So we've got our button bolts that we send in your kit. We're going to go through the controller side phase wire and then through the motor side phase wire, washer, and then nylon lock nut. So I'm going to just loosely connect those at the start. It will make sense here in a minute. What I'm doing is I'm making sure that these are straight and they stay straight, and that will be important when we slide the heat shrink over top. And obviously you want to center the button bolt on the heat shrink. And we're just going to stage this for right now, because I heat shrink all at the same time. Next, we're going to connect the power, the positive and negative lead from the breaker to the controller. One tip I would offer is taking the electrical tape that is binding the positive and negative lead and taking your wire cutters and just making a little bit more of an opening for your positive and negative. And what this does is it just gives you a little bit more wiggle room on installing the positive and negative lead. This will make a little bit more sense here in a minute. As we start to mock up where the leads go and how you cable route them. So we will go ahead and do the negative first. Now remember, you'll need to connect the ground from the controller to the negative lead. Like so. Oh, got a little twisted around there. Just like that. We'll get the positive. And there's all your connections. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to take our egg rider wire. We're going to go ahead and fish it up into the ignition compartment and pull it out the top. This is how we're going to route our egg rider connector, is up through there. Next, we're going to make our harness connections, but first, one thing that you may want to do, especially for people that live in wet climates, is use some dielectric grease. I usually put it on the female end of the connector, which is the bike's harness side. It also helps for the connectors to insert a bit better. Easy snap. Easy snap. All right, next we're going to heat shrink. So take the two pieces of heat shrink that are sent to you in our kit. First one is going to be on the bike harness side, this 3-pin plug right here. And then the other one is going to be for your computer disconnect, your display disconnect here that we removed earlier. I like to wear really thick gloves. And to have a piece of cardboard with me for backing. All right, now we're going to heat shrink our harness wires. You want to do your best to kind of work your heat around. Some heat shrink is better than others. If you get some heat shrink that won't close all the way, you can go ahead and grab some pliers and just squeeze the end there and there to create a nice good seal. All right, let's go over to the other one. Use the pliers on this one as well. All right. Now we'll do the phase wires. This is where I'll use the cardboard. There's the green one. It's got a nice good seal around each of the wires. You definitely want to check that after each heat cycle here. Good. Last one. And there we are. We'll work on tucking the wires up and starting to mount up the controller now. So first we're going to get the phase wires and tuck them behind the controller. And we're going to make the bottom connections for the billet mount to the brackets. So I only screw them in about 3/4 of the way. That way I have a little wiggle room. I'll move over to the other side. Look for any pinches. No pinches. And now we're going to stuff the harness up kind of underneath the ignition. Typically what I'll do is I'll actually come from the top and pull the harness up. And while I'm pulling upwards, great. So that aligns, and then we want to go ahead and close this back battery plate. Yep, get those lined up. So we'll install those. All right. Then we'll be able to install the upper portion of the mount. Get our 4mm. If you feel like you have to give it too much pressure, it's possible that you've got some wires in the way. So you can spread this out back there. Oh, look at that. And then the bolts and the threads perfectly line up. I'll do the other side. And we'll get all 4 of these nice and tight. There's not an official torque spec, but obviously you don't want to over tighten them or leave them too loose. All right, nice and mounted. We'll get our wires back in for the ignition, and we're going to leave the egg rider whip still exposed there. You want to make sure that all of your wiring coming out of the ignition is centered. From time to time, we've seen some self-installs from customers that have accidentally pinched some wires in here once they tighten it. So you definitely want to make sure that you get your wiring centered through this opening here at the top. And then tighten that. Next, we'll install our egg rider. So with the egg rider in position, we've got a 2.5 millimeter hex that we didn't go over in the original tool list, but now we are. So this you absolutely don't want to tighten too much. You want to get it just snug enough to where the display, you can't move the display with your hands. You don't want to crank it down. Once that is tightened, you want to put a little bit of dielectric grease on your Hygo. On the harness side and the display side, there are a notch that shows your alignment. There's also arrows on the top of each of the connectors. So you just line up the arrows and connect. Now we're going to cable manage.